Tom Hall was not a fan of the direction Wolfenstein 3D went. He prefers to target children with his wacky storylines and cartoon-style themes. He assumed the company would go back to making those games after Wolfenstein 3D was finished. He was wrong, and in the middle of developing the next game, he left the company. So for our next review, we'll take a look at the game that made Tom Hall leave id Software. The momentum generated by Wolfenstein 3D did not stop there. Nearing the end of 1993, id Software unleashed hell onto the world. A simple 4-letter word. Doom. A multi-planetary conglomerate known as the Union Aerospace Corporation performs secret experiments with teleportation by creating gateways between the two moons of Mars, Phobos and Deimos. An experiment goes horribly wrong, and a team of Space Marines is sent in to investigate. After hearing the garbled radio messages, gunfire, and screams of your fellow Marines, you're all that's left to fight through the entire onslaught of demons and keep them from attacking the Earth. The game starts you off with a pistol and enough bullets to last you until more weapons can be acquired. There are 7 weapons in total that you can find throughout the game. The shotgun, chain gun, and rocket launcher became somewhat of a standard composition when Doom was released. The plasma rifle functions as an energy chain gun, burning through ammunition and enemies like a welding torch on butter. Of course, we all know of the weapons Doom is well known for. The chainsaw has to be one of the most out-of-place weapons in the history of video games, in a military base on Mars where there are no trees to cut down. But who really cares? It's awesome! What game was out there back in 1993 where you could cut up a bunch of demons with a chainsaw? I've seen movies back then, but not video games. Then there's the BFG 9000, which is obviously an acronym for Big F***ing Gun. This massive weapon delivers a blast of energy that obliterates everything in a room. Look up satisfaction in a dictionary, and you'll find the BFG 9000. There was a reason why so many people were drawn to this game at the time, and it's because of the graphics. In 1993, what other games on the market had an interactive 3D environment with dynamic lighting and the scariest looking monsters and scenery you have ever seen at the time? Though technically the game wasn't truly a 3D game, a lot of people, just by looking at the game, can understand what all the fuss was about. Doom had the most realistic graphics for a video game at the time. Areas with various levels of ambient light, architecture reminiscent of hell itself, and even darkness is used to great effect. At some points in the game, the lights go out and monsters pour out of the walls to ambush you. Speaking of them, let's go over the monsters. You have the soldiers possessed by demonic forces primarily in the first 2 episodes. They're easy to take down, and they drop weapons and ammo for you. The 3rd episode is a bit harder because most of the monsters there don't drop anything. These are the Hellspawn. The generically named Demon is this muscular pink monster. They're very aggressive and dangerous up close, but easy enough to handle if you know how to kite them properly. Sometimes, you'll come across a partially invisible version of them, which can sneak up on you when you're distracted. The Kakko Demon is probably the most recognizable with its unique appearance. This floating ball of death takes up a lot of space and deals and absorbs a lot of damage. In a tight corridor, they can be your worst enemy, unless there's a Baron of Hell. Tough as a dump truck and nearly as big, these Goliaths are the worst thing on 2 legs since Tyrannosaurus Rex. Or so says the instruction manual. At the time, Doom offered an unprecedented challenge to the player that kept them on their toes. But times have changed. Now we use a mouse to aim. Now we know how to circle strafe. As long as we have enough ammo, we can take them down without breaking a sweat. The monsters are just too easy by today's standards. But to keep things interesting, the Nightmare difficulty makes the monsters more aggressive and allows them to respawn. It's so hard that it justifies a warning message when you choose it. The jump in difficulty between Ultraviolence and Nightmare is significant. Some of the power-ups you come across do have some interesting effects worth noting. Berserker looks like a normal medikit, brings you back to full health, but with a twist. It also gives you an extremely powerful punch. Combine this with the invulnerability power-up for the best results. This makes you immune to all damage, and as you can see, the colors on the screen turn negative. Partial invisibility will make you harder to see, causing a monster's ranged attack to be less accurate. The level design had obvious limitations due to the game engine. The levels themselves were not truly 3D, but were 2D with a height map. This allowed the game to run smooth with the hardware at the time, but this means there were no rooms above another room. That doesn't mean the levels could not have immersive environments. On the contrary, the level designers pushed the engine to its limits. The sound effects were alright, at best. For a game from 1993, I really think better sound effects could have been employed. The weapons sound too soft and weak for the job. Even Wolfenstein 3D had powerful weapon sounds. At the very least, the chainsaw actually sounds like a chainsaw. The monsters, for the most part, sound exactly the same. Although they use different attacking sounds, they sound the same when you pump them full of lead. On the other side of the audio coin, the music rocks. This upbeat meaty soundtrack helps to set the overall pace of the game. For the more creepier levels, a slower, gothic-themed soundtrack is used. The music was derived from popular rock and heavy metal songs at the time, including the likes of Pantera, Slayer, and AC/DC. The sound effects may have been uninspiring, but the awesome graphics and music more than make up for it. Doom revolutionized multiplayer by being the first game to allow multiple computers to connect to each other using Ethernet. And with its fast-paced run-and-gun action, if you had the chance to play it back then, you did just that. You could play on every single-player level, as well as levels specifically designed for deathmatch, or if you're into co-op, you can do that too. Although the term deathmatch existed long before Doom's existence, the game made it popular. The very nature of multiplayer meant it had extremely limited accessibility. This can only be played where you had access to several computers on a network, which means universities and office environments. Doom deathmatches were notorious for clogging internal networks with deathmatch data and decreasing overall productivity around the world. Intel and many other organizations created policies specifically disallowing Doom activity during work hours. The shareware distribution of Doom ensured the game would reach as many people as possible. The first episode had 9 levels, and was obtained primarily by downloading it from any bulletin board system at the time. By 1995, it was estimated to have been installed on more than 10 million computers worldwide, more so than Microsoft's shiny new operating system, Windows 95. That might surprise a lot of people, since Microsoft spent millions of dollars for advertising, yet its software just gave away a portion of their game to the public. Later on, Bill Gates superimposed himself into the game as part of a presentation to promote DirectX and Windows 95 as a gaming platform.
We're going to have the best performance, the way to reach out and do multiplayer games, lots of new peripherals, and the improvements just keep coming.
The game was also ported to Windows 95 and enabled higher playable resolutions.
And better.
Yeah.
Don't interrupt me.
One of the major features Doom had was its ability to record demos while playing the game. Once recorded, the demo can be played back to show how that particular session played out. This feature led Doom to be one of the first few games to develop a community devoted to speedruns. Aside from simply completing a level as quickly as possible, there's many different categories of speedruns to make things interesting. 100% completion meant you had to pick up every item, kill every monster, and find every secret on top of finishing as fast as possible. Killing every monster on the level using your fists or the pistol became known as Tyson mode, and the pacifist mode was a speedrun without intentionally harming any monsters. And if you're looking for more Doom content, there's lots of user-generated content available to download. New levels were distributed as custom-made WOD files. The simpler WODs only contained a single level, whereas the more complex WODs had multiple levels with custom sounds and textures. One such WOD available back in the day was the Star Wars mod. Although the mod never actually changed any of the gameplay, it did introduce Star Wars themed levels, complete with sprites, sound, and music. I think we can all agree, taking down stormtroopers with a lightsaber is extremely satisfying. To this day, there's still an active community creating new mods and playing around with the tools. It goes without saying, Doom was both a blessing and a curse. For many of us, Doom kept us awake far past midnight when we had school or work in the morning. For businesses, this was a manager's worst nightmare, having to deal with employees fighting to the death rather than doing their job. By now, you probably got the idea. Doom is awesome. But we're not done yet.
There has been a terrible shooting at a high school in Littleton, Colorado.